For this video, we're going to be discussing solving and graphing multi-step inequalities. And the procedure for solving an inequality is really very similar to solving an equation. We're going to be following all of the exact same steps. The only difference is in the sign. When we're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, the symbol changes. And what really happens is all of the signs change. For example, if I have negative 3x is greater than 15, to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. We know that this becomes positive x, and 15 divided by negative 3, well, 15 divided by 3 is 5, and a positive divided by a negative gives me a negative. The sign here changes from positive to negative, from negative to positive. The sign here changes from positive to negative, and then we also have to change our inequality sign from greater than to less than. The same idea over here. To get b by itself, I have to multiply both sides by negative 5. On this side, I just get 5. These negatives cancel out. On this side, I have a negative and a negative, so the negatives cancel out again. This becomes 100. This went from a negative number to a positive. This went from a negative to a positive. And my symbol also has to change to greater than or equal to. So the key thing here is whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number, our symbol changes. Now, graphing. I'm sure you've learned how to graph an inequality before, but we're just going to go through it step by step and make sure we understand this. So to graph an inequality that you've solved, you need to take a look at the solution. So we've got an example down here. We're going to go through this. We want to place a circle on the number line at the value listed in the inequality. So for example, in this inequality, the value listed is 3. I always say you need to put 0 on your inequality somewhere, and then, or on your graph somewhere, and then we'll put 3 over here. Now when it's greater than or less than, you have just an open circle, or it's closed for greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, as in this case. The reason why it's closed is that 3 is part of the solution. If I plugged 3 in for x, 3 is less than or equal to x because 3 is equal to x. That's why we have a closed circle. Now, we need to shade this graph in one way or the other. And the way we do that is we want to locate several solutions on the line, and then that will help us determine which way to shade. For example, I listed some solutions here, 4, 5, and 6. If I plug these in, I can say, well, 3 is definitely less than or equal to 4, because 3 is less than 4. 3 is less than or equal to 5. And 3 is less than or equal to 6. These inequalities are all true, so these numbers are all in the solution. And now I want to see, like, where on the number line are they? Well, 4 is not between 0 and 3. It's bigger than it. It's going the other way. There's 4. And there's 5. And there's 6. So we know that the way we need to shade our graph is on the side with the solutions. So I just want to color in on my graph all the way to the end of the arrow on this side. And we know that any number that falls to the right of 3 is greater than 3 and therefore can be a solution to our inequality. We could put like 12 on here, put like 25, we could put like 3,000. These are all solutions to the inequality. And that's how we're going to figure out which way to shade when we graph, is we are going to plug in some solutions and see where they fall. Alright, so let's take a look at example 1. Example 1 says to solve and graph this inequality here. So I've got 5 times the quantity x minus 4 plus 3x is less than or equal to 12x minus 40 minus 2x. So our steps are exactly the same as if we were solving an equation. My first step is I want to distribute 5 times x and 5 times negative 4, which gives me 5x minus 20. And then I've got my 3x is still here. On this side, there's no distributive property to do. My next step is that I want to combine my like terms on either side. So on the left, I have 5x and 3x. On the right, I have 12x minus 2x. 5 plus 3 is 8, so I get 8x. 12 minus 2 is 10, so I get 10x. Now I want to move all of my variables to one side and all of my constants to the other. So I'm going to subtract 8x on both sides. And I'm going to add 40 on both sides. I end up with 2x, or 20 is less than or equal to 2x. And so my next step is I want to get this x by itself, so I divide both sides by 2. This is a positive number, so I don't have to worry about that symbol changing. Divide both sides by 2, and I get, that shouldn't say 2, that should say 10 is less than or equal to x. So there you can see that all we did is solve this just like we would solve an equation. We did the distributive property, we combined like terms, we moved variables and constants to either side, and then we divided. We solved this directly the same as we would solve an equation. Alright, we didn't have to worry about flipping the sign because our coefficient was positive. So now we need to graph. So I'm going to put 0 on here. Always put 0 on your graph. 10 goes on there. It's a closed circle because of the equal to part, which means 10 is part of the solution. Now I want to list in some numbers that are solutions to this inequality. So 10 is less than or equal to x. So what sort of numbers could I put in for x? Well, I could put in 11 because 11 is bigger than 10. I could put in 15 because 15 is bigger than 10. I could put in 25 because 25 is bigger than 10. So all of those numbers fit into the solution for this inequality. So I want to put some of them on here. Here's 11. 15 could be here. 25 would be like over here somewhere. And you'll notice that if you're doing this correctly, your solutions to your inequality should all be on one side of your value, which these all are, and that is the way that you shade. You want to shade all the way to the end of the line. So this is how our inequality should look. All right, let's take a look at example number 2. So example number 2, we need to solve and graph this inequality. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video here, try this one, and then start it again once you've got an answer. All right, so now that you've tried this, let's see what we need to do first. Our first step is to distribute on both sides. 2 times negative 2, times 3x, and negative 2 times negative 3. And over here, 9 times x and 9 times 4. So if we do that, we get 12 minus 6x plus 6 is greater than or equal to 9x plus 36. Now we need to combine like terms on either side. On the left, 12 plus 6. Those are like terms. On the right, there are no like terms. So I get negative 6x plus 18 is greater than 9x plus 36. Now I want to move all of my terms to one side. So I go subtract 9x on both sides and subtract 18 on both sides. Over here, I get negative 15x. Over here, I get 18. Now I need to get x by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 15. Now this ends up being a case because the number I'm dividing by is negative, my coefficient is negative, this sign is going to flip and become a less than symbol. So I get x is less than or equal to negative 18 over 15. Alright, and this fraction reduces to negative 6 over 5. So the thing that's key to see here is that because I divided by a negative number, my sign switched. Alright, so now let's graph it. Put my circle on here, or put my 0 on here. I've got a circle at negative 6/5. Because this is less than, it's an open circle. So now I need to think what numbers are less than negative 6/5. Well, negative 6/5, that's equal to negative 1.2. So numbers that are smaller than negative 1.2, well, that's like negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. These numbers are all smaller than negative 1.2, so if I put them in, they make my inequality true. So here's negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Because all of my solutions are to the left of my circle, that is the way that I shade in for my answer. So the key thing with this problem is realizing this right here, that dividing by a negative means that I need to flip my sign. Alright, so I'm going to leave you this try it problem. It says solve and graph 4 times the quantity x plus 8 is greater than or equal to 3 times the quantity x minus 4.